The very first time, my first time. I'm sure all of you here, all the women in this audience, remember their first time. My first time was when I was 11 years old. I remember it vividly. I was on my first family holiday. We went to a seaside town. It was at the end of, well, towards the end of apartheid. The petty apartheid laws were being lifted. We were able to stay at a hotel. You know, previously we couldn't. We went to a desegregated beach. And on that day, I was making my way towards the car when my mother motioned me to stop. She noticed something in my underwear. It was soiled. She stopped me to have a conversation, bad conversation, about what was happening to the physiology, how my body was changing. My mother's a professional nurse. She spoke in a way that was kind, but factual. I felt I'd come of age. Of course, a little embarrassed that my mother had discovered this, but also relieved that I didn't have to have this happen at school, that I wasn't one of those girls that had that walk of shame. You remember that? The strained dresses when girls had to be sent home? I'm also lucky that I had someone to explain it all to me. Because for most girls, what they know about their bodies and menstrual periods are a mixture of myths, fiction, and superstition. We can't blame them. It seems to me, if we look at the vocabulary around menstruation, that it's something that we're not supposed to talk about. I'll give you an example. The English language is sprinkled with so many euphemisms for menstruation. Let's go through a few. Heard about anti-flow? Cousin Rid? Flow. Oh, she's delicate. Time of the month. And worst of all, women suffering. Has this anything to do with Adam and Eve? Eve giving Adam the apple? And on that topic, you know, religion plays such a big role in perpetuating the stigmas and myths around menstruation. In the Hindu faith, for example, a woman who's menstruating may not partake in communal activities, prayers, and for that period, she has to be in isolation. Such is the fate of women. I want to talk about womanity and that's right. And the best kept secret. And onto the pink tax. What is the pink tax? Pink tax is the burden that we all bear as women. It comes in various forms. It's the stigma, the fact that 5 days of a month were considered impure and polluted, and bear that brunt of what that means in terms of our place in society. The second tax is the environment. I must confess, I unwittingly contributed to the tons of waste that plague our planet, having been one of those that use sanitary towels. Sanitary towels, for those who may know, are made of plastic polymers, wood pulp, and an absorbent gel. They take about 500 years to biodegrade. Think of that. It's astounding. It's the stuff that nightmares are made of. And what happens to that waste? It gets to a waste dump. And because it contains blood, oftentimes in some areas, you get manual laborers scavenging over the garbage, exposing themselves to hepatitis B. Gets sorted, it moves to a landfill, and for 500 years, something happens. Some of that toxin seeps into underground water systems. We could, of course, incinerate it and release toxins into the air. There are no easy ways to wrap our heads around this phenomenon. Other women may flush it down the toilet. It enters our water systems. Sometimes it's open rivers. making scarce resource like water even more dear. And then there's another tax, the tax of being a woman, being on her period, and our health. PMS, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, dysmenorrhea, otherwise known as period pains. And for some women, this can be debilitating, unable to go to work or fulfill their duties for those days. Not to mention the underwear that you have to replace, because accidents happen, right? And then there's the added expense of the medication that we need to treat all these things that occur whilst we're on our time of the month. Can I use that expression? I prefer menstrual period. These are the pink taxes. And for some girls and women, the tax is too onerous. 2 years ago, a friend of mine, who's in this audience, Zakira Mohammed, created a video. And in this video, she highlights the plight of young girls who are unable to go to school because they cannot afford a safe menstrual hygiene solution. She showed this video to us. Her intention was to make sure that we raise money to distribute 1 million cups. Lirat Dundora, a friend of ours, and myself joined Zakira Mohammed. We formed an NGO. In fact, we should call it a social enterprise because it does more than provide not-for-profit services. We got together, and in our journey, we discovered the menstrual cup. In fact, to be honest, Zakira had already discovered it. But in our journey, we got to a point where we decided to make our own cup. And with this cup, we had the first time user in mind, remembering the first time. And what we did was create a cup that was soft, small, comfortable, with a life of 5 to 10 years. Now, you may be surprised that I'd never heard of a cup. I was surprised. I'd gone to medical school and not heard of it. And yet it was discovered more than a century ago and patented by an actress, Leona Chalmers. And to her, we're grateful. So the males particularly probably in this audience are wondering, what kind of cup? That sounds hideous. What is that? The cup is an apparatus. It was first made out of rubber. Now it's more likely to be made out of medical-grade silicone. It's bell-shaped. You fold it, insert it into the vagina. It opens once inside, collects blood, closes against the cervix. It's all very easy. In fact, after the first use, you won't look back. And then you empty it. It usually can be emptied every 8 to 12 hours. So it provides some protection for girls whilst they're at school who may not be able to have access to running water, separate ablution facilities for girls and boys. So we're very excited about our product, and it's called Mina. You might note on the slide, Mina means me or I, but it's also a girl's name. It's a universal name because our project addresses a universal problem that crosses boundaries. It's also an opportunity for us to reverse that narrative about our tax and how difficult it is to be a woman. It allows us to empower ourselves and to celebrate our womanity. And what is womanity? It's being part of womankind. Men aren't excluded. We know you've got mothers and sisters, girlfriends, wives. You can join our womanity, you're welcome. But it's important that we know that we can all contribute to this narrative, that we as women all understand the pink tax, and we all can do something to make a difference. Mina is just one part of our first step to changing that narrative. And I call you all to join us on this journey. It's time.